Hey, everybody, this is William Cunningham. You can call me Reggie of My Hope in Marriage. You can visit us online at myhopeinmarriage.com. And what I do is provide resources, a point of view, a perspective, a male's perspective on marriage. And that the idea is to help you to forge a happy and fulfilling one. Okay, and there's some very important things that you should realize in forging ahead with a happy marriage, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, at least one part of that. And the question is, do you want to have a happy marriage? Or you might say, how can I make my marriage better? How can I make my marriage better? You know, what do I have to do such that my marriage is better? Well, some important things you need to realize about that. First of all, as I said before, I think it used to be my motto or slogan for My Hope in Marriage, and that is, it takes two to tango. So in other words, if you want to have a happy marriage, you both need to want to have a happy marriage. Otherwise, you will not have a happy marriage. All right? I'll say more than likely you won't. Maybe you want to have a happy marriage, but your spouse isn't really thinking about stuff like that. But because of the relationship and the way things just happen to be, you're okay with it. All right. However, if you want to have a happy and fulfilling marriage, the husband and the wife have to want that same thing. And not only have to want it, you have to work at it. You have to want it as an idea, an ideal situation, and you have to want to work at it, and you have to work at it, both of you, which means the husband and the wife you need to be concerned. You need to place your marriage and your spouse in a high priority position in your life, because think about it, marriage is a very influential thing in our lives. You know, if you have to come home to a spouse that it just puts dread in your heart, well, that's not good, and it's going to cause stress and depression, perhaps, and all kind of other feelings, which spawn different acts. So it's not a good deal to have a bad marriage. So you should want to have a good marriage. Now, it also involves, why did you get married? Why did you propose to your now wife, if you did the proposing? Or why did you accept or oppose to your now husband, if you did the proposing or the accepting, so forth? Why did you do it? Why did you want to marry that person? What was it that caused you to say, I want to spend the rest of my life with her or him? And were you both thinking about it? And for those who are contemplating marriage or moving in that direction, are you thinking about how we're going to make this thing work? How are we going to make it work? How are we going to have a successful marriage? Okay? And the first thing is that you both have to want that. You both have to want a successful, fulfilling, or a happy marriage, whatever you want to call it. And you both have to work at it. That's important. That's step one. You want to have a good marriage? You both have to be a team. You have to form one team. You have to be one flesh, husband and wife, forging together to make your marriage better. And there are certain things that you're going to need to know in doing that. For one thing, communications. You're going to have to learn to communicate. And sometimes communications can be difficult depending on the personality of you and your spouse. Your spouse may be the timid type. Your spouse may be the kind of person that don't take criticism or opposition very well. So you're going to have a hard time bringing up issues that you have, problems that you see, because you know you may have to deal with an emotional situation instead of the issue at hand. But nonetheless, communication is very, very important. And in communication, there's one thing that I learned many years ago when I first I wasn't around the time when I started studying marriage, shortly afterward. And that is this concept of the love language. You know, we receive and give love in different ways. And what's his name? Gary Chapman, the author of the Five Love Languages, he identified those love languages as you have the person who words of affirmation. You have gift giving. You have acts of service. You have physical touch, and you have quality time. All right, and I don't want to get into that too much here because that's not the purpose of this particular video. But words of affirmation is just someone who likes to hear it. They like to hear it. They like to hear praises, compliments, just to affirm, whatever. They cook like my wife. That's one of my wife's life language, maybe even the primary. You got to tell her all the time. And if you don't, she's going to ask you. All right. How was this? And I didn't getting finished chewing. All right. So another one like physical touch, a person who likes touch, they're touchy-feely. And if you touch them and feel them and that means something to them. Okay. Quality time, you spend time with your spouse. That means something to them. Or gift giving, when you give your spouse a little gift, it doesn't have to be expensive stuff. You just give them something that has meaning to them. That means something to them. And of course, acts of service, when you're doing things for them, helping them or whatever. Okay, so those are some important things. All right, as far as communicating, and that's specific to communicating love and communicating love, whether you're receiving it or giving it. And you should know your spouse's love language, because one thing you don't want in trying to have a happy marriage is for your spouse to feel unloved. All right. Even though you really love your spouse, your husband or your wife, but they're not receiving it because you're giving them gifts all the time, and they just want to sit down and cuddle and spend some time with you. They want to ride a bike with you. They want to, go and take a walk with you or whatever. Okay. All right. So communications is important. You want to have a good marriage, you have to have communication. Matter of fact, any relationship, if you want it to be successful, you better communicate. All right. All right. Another thing that's very important, if you want to have a happy marriage, here's something that you must remember and constantly remind yourself of. All right. First of all, is you can't change your spouse. You can perhaps try to influence them, and some even go as far as trying to manipulate. You don't want to go down that road. But you want to realize that you cannot change your spouse. Your spouse's heart is where your spouse's heart is. If their heart is for the relationship, it's for the relationship. They're going to be more open to doing things for the relationship than if their heart were not for the relationship. In other words, if they take the marriage for granted, they take the relationship for granted, it was just a means to an end, you're not going to change that. I don't care how gallant you try to be to your wife. I don't care how loving you try to be. I don't care if you get a master's degree in the 5 love languages. You're not going to change their heart. So you got to remember that. So therefore, one of the most important things you can do after you've communicated and you realize that it takes 2 to tango, the one thing that you must do is work on yourself. That's the only thing you really have control of. Work on yourself. Make yourself a better person. All right? Groom well, watch what you wear. Don't take it for granted that you're home and you can just just do anything. Wear raggedy stained clothes and food all over it and dirt all over it, unless you just been cooking, or you just you finished painting. But other than that, as a regular way around the house, as a regular routine, as a regular way of doing things, you don't want to just be sloppy. You don't want to just have dirty clothes on, not groomed. Not that you're going to be decked out as if you were going to a job interview or anything, but you want to look nice for even your spouse and yourself. You want to always be, top of your game. Yeah, you're gonna have relaxed time. Where you're gonna chill. Yeah, of course, but don't take it for granted that you can just let yourself hang all out and let yourself just go at home with your spouse, because that's going to have a negative effect. There's going to come a time when you're going to look at your spouse and they're not going to be as appeasing and appetizing as they once were. Because they may have gained a whole lot of weight. They may, even if they haven't gained a whole lot of weight, they may have lost a whole lot of weight. It goes both ways, especially for guys who like big women. Okay. But it's like they gained a few pounds or whatnot, but they don't really take care of themselves. It's not so much the weight, it's your presentation, it's how you carry yourself. Do you just let yourself be sloppy, or you know what I'm saying? So do you just get lazy and so forth and so on? All right, so you got to be careful with that. So you want to work on yourself. You want to make sure you're on an up and up all the time. You want to make sure that you are doing what you need to do for you and to benefit the relationship. Because responsibility says, yeah, I may not want to do this, or I may not feel like doing this, but it's good for the relationship. So you have to put that effort in. Work on yourself. I don't know, if you want to start a business, you want to learn a different language, whatever. Be the best you that you can be. All right? And perhaps that'll be more attractive to your spouse, or that'll help keep the fire burning if there was a fire there. So work on yourself. Okay. And very important. Now, this is a part where I don't really see a lot of people talking about. It is out there as far as on forums and comments and posts and so forth. And that is, you have to deal with the reality of the way things are. You know what I mean? If, like I said in the beginning, if your spouse is not really concerned about a happy marriage, there's nothing you can do about it. You can just work on it perhaps to where you're content with the marriage. Some guy says, well, if she's not interested, I want out. Okay, I want out. I want to be with somebody that wants to be with me. All right. Some guys will just say, okay, if I don't get it from her, I'm going to get it from her. I'm serious. And it's like they medicate themselves by by getting what they want from their spouse, from someone else. Okay. That's an option that some guy, I'm not condoning it, but that's what some guys do. And some gals do, as well. Male and female, they do that. They sometimes get what they want from their spouse, from someone else or something else. Maybe you want a sense of belonging, so the guy's going to spend more time at work, maybe more time with his buddies. Whatever, is going to be more time away from his wife, because being with his wife does not provide the satisfaction and the fulfillment that he wants. Or spending time with her husband does not provide the satisfaction or the fulfillment that she wants. So she'll find other things to do. She'll go to a gym. She'll hang out more with her friends, or she may spend more time at work. Right? So deal with this reality of the situation. If you've done all you can do, and there's nothing else to do, You've learned this and you've applied it. You've learned the love language. You did all these things for years. I'm not talking about for a week. I'm talking about for a good amount of time, because it takes time for a relationship to, shift. If you've done all that and it still is, you don't see any change in your spouse, then guess what? He or she's not going to change. Have a conversation. Let them know how you feel. All right, because you don't want to just make assumptions. Maybe she's responding to something that you're doing and you don't realize it. She's taking something that you routinely do as a sign of you really don't care about her, or you don't really care about him. So that's why it's so important to communicate. And sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes you can't get over that personality hindrance or that personality boundary. Because when you bring up something, they're going to get emotional and they're going to, you're going to end up dealing with their emotion and you both dealing with the problem that you're having. Because for me, these problems are only an opportunity for resolution. Conflict is only an opportunity for resolution in the relationship. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you should, every time something goes wrong, you just blurt it out. I'm talking routine stuff that goes on, stuff that you see that's her way or that's his way. All right, stuff like that. I remember when I first got married, my wife would, we hadn't lived together before, so she would be in the bathroom, she'd be brushing her teeth, and then she would walk out the bathroom into the room. I'm like, no, I just had a serious problem with that. You don't walk around with your tooth and your toothpaste and ew. So I told her straight up, and she stopped at least when I'm around, because that's just disgusting to me. And if she kept it up, that disgust would just build. It's like a little, a program that just itches away. Disgusted. Next thing you know, I'm totally disgusted with you. Yeah. So you got to communicate. You got to bring these things up. You got to do what you got to do. But sometimes you can't because of the personality of your spouse. Maybe if you say something to your husband, he just gets angry and he wants to start throwing things and hollering at you. So how in the world are you going to get conflict resolved? You have to deal with that reality. Maybe that will never happen because of their personality, because of the way they see the world. Right? You got to deal with that. And I can't tell you what to do. No one can tell you what to do, but you have to decide, what am I going to do with my life? You only have one life to live here on this earth. And I would rather live my life with, at least with my own struggles. I would rather live my life with happiness and fulfillment as best I can, to eat, drink, and enjoy the fruits of my labor. That's the gift of God, the Bible tells us. All right, so I have to deal with the reality. She's never going to change. She never seems to care about the relationship. She cares more about the children, her career, church, or whatever. But as far as us, nothing. There's nothing there. So what do I want to do about that? What am I going to do about that? How do I feel? What am I going to do about that? That's what you gotta think of that. You can't keep going down the same road doing the same thing, expecting everything to be different. This time it's going to work. No, it's not. Probably not. Okay, unless something traumatic happens. She thinks you're trying to cheat on her or something, then all of a sudden something starts clicking, or vice versa. I heard was a counselor or something on YouTube, a therapist or whatnot, and he said one of his things he recommends for a relationship that's bad is that you give the impression that you're going to cheat, or you give the impression that you are cheating. All right, and then, when you're doing without, or when you have a sense of a possibility of loss, that's when we really really take seriously the things that we have, because we're so used to taking things for granted. All right. Okay. All right. So that's what I want to talk about. Making your marriage better. First of all, realize it takes both of you have to want that, and both of you have to work at it. You have to communicate. That has to be king. All right. Now, I didn't mention this before, but the marriage has to be a priority. The relationship has to be a priority. Okay. Also, work on yourself. Spend a lot of time working on yourself. Okay. Because you can't control your spouse. You can't change your spouse, but you can change you. And you want to be the best you that you can be. All right. And then, of course, deal with the reality of the situation. All right. You can spend decades thinking and hoping that things will get better, and they don't. All right. Because your spouse is your spouse. He or she is who they are. They're not going to change. They have their heart. Their heart is a certain place. Unless their heart can change, unless something can change their heart, they're just going to continue on the same road. And it may not be conducive to a happy and fulfilling marriage. And therefore, you have to come to a point where you have to make a decision as to what you're going to do. All right? All right. I hope this has helped. I'm William Cunningham, but you can call me Reggie, my middle name, of My Hope in Marriage. I pray that you would take what I say and use it and benefit, and hopefully it helps you. I would appreciate it if you could give me a comment. Let me know what you think. If there's anything else that you would recommend that I could have added, I'd like to hear from you, especially the ladies. I don't hear much from the ladies very much, and I was really hoping to get more women participation because I don't know the women's perspective. I know the guy's perspective. All right. Well, again, My Hope in Marriage. www.myhopeinmarriage.com. Until the next time, be blessed.